Hi, I'm Dr. George Yancey. Let's shatter some paradigms. And the paradigm I want to share today concerns Doug Wilson and CNN. Now, you're probably familiar with the interview Doug Wilson did on CNN. It got some play, it's got some play on social media, and there's a couple of things I just want to comment on it. The controversy is the sort of patriarchy that obviously comes out of Doug Wilson and the comment about women voting and the connection to Pete Hegseth that shows influence in our current government. And that's all well and good. I mean, I think those things definitely need to be debated. I have my feelings on them, and maybe in a future video I'll talk more about that. But that's not what I want to focus in on right now. A lot of what was talked about when it concerns Doug Wilson was his Christian nationalism. And Doug Wilson himself talks about being a Christian nationalist. And that's all well and good. The problem is, I'm not sure that's the best way to explain Doug Wilson. Even though he himself calls himself a Christian nationalist, I'm not sure that's the best way. And I'm going to go into why. And I also want to discuss why instead of Christian nationalism, I think identity politics is a better way of understanding Doug Wilson. Okay? So let's go into that. All right, so one of the problems with Christian nationalism in the way we're looking at it today is that it is sort of all over the place in its definition. And it's all over the place in its definition concerning the popular culture. And even in academia, I feel that the tools that's used to assess Christian nationalism doesn't do a good job. And I've done a video where I've discussed why I feel the Christian nationalism scale is not a good instrument for measuring what people call Christian nationalism. I won't go into that today. Just saying that I'm not sure Christian nationalism is well defined. But when it is well defined, when it is defined, I'm not sure it's the best way to capture Doug Wilson. Here's a definition that comes out of a book on Christian nationalism, on what Christian nationalism is. Here we go. Christian nationalism supports this sort of statement, according to the authors of this book. America was founded as a Christian nation by white men who are traditional Christians, who base the nation's founding documents on Christian principles. The United States is blessed by God, which is why it's been so successful. The nation has a special role to play in God's plan for humanity. But these blessings are threatened by cultural degradation from un-American influences, both inside and outside our borders. Now, some of that does apply. Doug Wilson talks about a Christian nation, that he wants a Christian city, a Christian nation, a Christian world. That applies. I'm not debating that. But you see the notion about a white nation and this sort of ethnocentrism based on race that kind of comes out in this definition? Doug Wilson is actually, and I know this, I've been sort of following a little bit on social media, and just to let you know, my forthcoming book on identity politics, when I talk about conservative Christian identity politics, he's one of the examples I give. So I have been reading up on Doug Wilson. And when it comes to racial issues, I think he's not one of these people who talk about whites and whites only. In fact, he has actually criticized some of the Christians who have gone too far to talking about whites and kinship and that sort of thing. He would not agree with this definition of Christian nationalism. And if he would not agree with it, and this is what people have in their minds, among other things about Christian nationalism, remember, it's kind of hard to define sometimes. And it's not the best way to describe him. I would contend a better way is identity politics. Now, why? Identity politics is about our identities and how those identities shape our politics. And Doug Wilson's politics is shaped by this notion of a Christian nation and also by the notion that Christians are oppressed. When you look at his work, he talks about how Christians are being put upon, how they're facing oppressors. This is part of his teaching. And this drives a lot of what he's doing, why he's built a community to protect his flock from the secular outside forces that are coming in and weighing in on them. And in fact, I just want to say this. While I'm obviously not a fan of Doug Wilson, the reason why he's attractive to the people he's attractive to is the notion of community. And I think those of us who are Christians but do not want to accept his type of Christianity would do well to learn about how to do better building community, because that's what he's gotten right. What he's gotten wrong is that we Christians have to fight off the oppressors. There are ways in which we can do this which does not come across as so off-putting, as so attacking other people. The problem with identity politics is it demonizes others. And rather than finding solutions for everyone, we only find solutions for ourselves. And that's what I see in Doug Wilson, and that's what I see with other identity politics people who push it, who pervade in it. That's why I don't support identity politics. I think it's a problem. And so Doug Wilson is a problem, but not because of this sort of Christian nationalism, which is trying to build a white nation. I think that's unfair. And I think you have to deal with people where they're at, not how you project upon them. But in identity politics, that unfortunately has poisoned a lot of conservative Christians, and, to be fair, has poisoned a lot of people who are not Christians, and drives a lot of our politics. Understanding that is how we're going to get through to people who are caught up in Doug Wilson's little web here. Telling them that they want a white Christian nation is not going to do it, because that's not what he really teaches. But talking about how we need to find solutions for everyone, and that how we as Christians are not to just attack people, not to just worry about oppression, although we can worry about Christianophobia. I do talk about Christianophobia, but how we can engage people where they're at, and to really bring people closer to Christ through loving them. So, Doug Wilson is an issue. The other issues brought up, the patriarchy, definitely, I have no desire to take away my wife or any other woman's right to vote or anything like that. There are obviously other problems. But I just want to focus in on this, because if you want to really convince people to move away from this, you got to know what actually motivates them. And I think the talk about Christian nationalism misses the point, even though, once again, he would call himself a Christian nationalist, but he would not use that definition or a lot of the other definitions people use. Does this share some paradigms? Paradigms about Doug Wilson, about how to think about it? A different way of thinking about that CNN news show, the segment on Doug Wilson, and how to think about it in ways that may be more clear, may allow us to interact in a more healthy way. Well, I hope it did share some paradigms. If you enjoy this sort of talk and you want to see some more YouTube like this, consider subscribing. Please give me a like. If you disagree, why don't you make a comment? Or if you agree, make a comment. I'd like to get some engagement, build this community, and I hope you'll be a part of that. Well, thanks. And please come back. We can shatter some more paradigms.